This is the Business Stuff Podcast. This is where I will share the lessons I've learned from advising thousands of businesses over almost 30 years. Each episode will give you practical insight to allow you to learn from other people's mistakes. I'll be pulling in experts from our team and the world of business, and together we'll make sure your business is giving you what you want. My name is Martin, and this is the Business Stuff Podcast.
Hi, it's Jack from the Accelerator team. Unfortunately, no Marty this week, but I'm sure he'll be back in your ears very soon. But I am joined with Emma from RL Wealth. Hi, Emma.
Hello.
You all right?
I'm good, thank you.
Good, yeah. It's great to get you on the podcast. First time you're on.
It is.
Excited?
It is. Very excited, yes. Sharing some top tips.
Yeah, perfect. So, yeah, just a little kind of quick introduction about yourself. You know, tell us what you do and what Robson Laidler Wealth do as well. It'd be really interesting to hear to start off with.
Yeah, so I am one of the financial planners here at Robson Laidler Wealth. There are currently 3 of us. We have a team of administrators and paraplanners behind us. And basically we were set up to provide personal financial planning services to the clients of Robson Laidler. Mm-hmm. So we deal with medics, we deal with corporates, we deal with a lot of directors of companies. And it's basically, our core service is financial planning. So it's very relevant with what we're talking about today.
Absolutely, yeah. So you've kind of alluded to that, but there's no accident that you're on the podcast this week because it is Financial Planning Week.
It certainly is.
Excellent. Yeah, so why don't you tell us a little bit about what Financial Planning Week is and why is it so important?
Yeah, so Financial Planning Week is something that's run by the CISI. It's basically an initiative to help people understand why financial planning is important and why financial planning is not as straightforward as financial advice, which is, I think, an area that some people get confused by. And it's just to help people to seek advice and think about the bigger picture when they're looking at their finances and all of the different areas that come with that.
Yeah, it's interesting. You definitely struck on a couple of things that we're going to talk about a little bit more there. To start off with, just this idea of what financial planning is against financial advice, because I think a lot of people probably use those two terms kind of interchangeably, but there's actually quite a significant difference, isn't there?
There is. I think historically, financial advice has been more about the sale of a product. So by product, something like an ISA or a pension, everybody's heard of those and they think, oh, I need a pension, or I'll just go and get a pension. Mm-hmm. But actually financial planning is looking at the bigger picture. So it's understanding where you are now, it's understanding where you want to be in the future and how you're going to get there. And that's where we come in, because we'll look at different areas. So we'll look at, your income, your expenses. We'll look at what income you think you might need in retirement. And then we'll look at ways in which you can achieve that. And that might be helping you to budget, or that might be looking at investing into a pension that's going to provide you with an income when you retire. And also taking into account things like risk, what level of investment risk would you need to take in order to achieve the number, the sum of money that you want or need when you stop working and you need something to replace that loss of earnings. But it's also about looking at tax allowances, making sure you're using everything, and protecting your family. I mean, a lot of people don't consider what might happen if, disaster was to strike and there was to be a loss in a family. How would the remaining members of that family continue to survive? So it's about the bigger picture. Mm-hmm. And it's about collaborating with a financial advisor, a financial planner, to define some realistic goals and then helping you work towards those goals.
There's so much crossover of what I do and what you do in terms of, in fact, you even mentioned now, where, how, there, in terms of like what you do with your clients and sit down with them and talk about like, well, where are you at the moment? Where do you want to be? And then we can come up with a plan of how you do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's about looking at the short term and the long term, and it depends on the life stage that you're at. So a younger person, might be looking to save for a deposit. Then it would be a case of, okay, you need to set yourself an emergency fund in place, 6 to 12 months worth of your expense need. Keep that in an instant cash account. Then anything over and above that, you can start to put towards a mortgage, put towards a deposit, maybe look at things like lifetime ISAs, which can help you on that path. Then again, I'm going back to the life stages. Then, you get that mortgage, you have that debt, then it's about protecting that. So if anything was to happen to you or you couldn't work, taking out some form of protection policy that should give you either a lump sum or a regular income, help your family through that. And then it's about looking to save towards the future. So the longer term goals, when will you be financially independent? What age will that be? How much do you need, and how to get there? And make sure you stay on track, I think is a really important part of it.
Definitely,
it's
yeah.
not an exercise you do once. It's something that you keep under regular review because, circumstances change all of the time.
You're so right, yeah. And then I think that's probably one of the biggest misconceptions is that financial advice, you just turn up and you go, right, I've got a pension now, sorted. Won't see you again, thank you very much. Whilst actually, as you said, circumstances change and suddenly the goalposts shift a little bit.
Yeah.
And it's really kind of key that you actually maintain that relationship, constantly changing those goalposts as your circumstances change.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the work that we do with clients, that we see regularly is model what if scenarios. What if you are unable to save as much into your pension? What will the impact of that be? What if you needed to use a lump sum of money towards a wedding? Your daughter's getting married, you want to give a lump sum of money. What impact is that going to have? And basically just, how that is going to look in the future and what other steps you need to take to make sure you can do those things that you want to do.
Well, I'm sure there's plenty of fathers out there going, that's fine, because my daughter's not allowed to get married till she's 45. And I'll be dead by then. So yeah, that is really interesting in terms of, I didn't really know until we started chatting about the podcast that there was this significant difference. So it's great, and I'm sure a lot of business owners listening to this will certainly maybe appreciate a lot of what you've said in terms of a business sense, where you're talking about what if scenarios and being like, oh, well, I do that with my business in terms of like the risks associated with that. But I can't imagine many of them actually think about it personally in terms of even doing like a personal budget and looking at what their income is and what their requirements are.
Well, yeah, I think business owners, it's a really important thing to look at, because I know we've done a podcast. I think my colleague Neil did a podcast.
Yes, he did.
Earlier in the year. And for business owners, it's about understanding what your number is. If your plan is to sell that business at some point in future, how much do you need to get out of that business to be able to provide for your lifestyle? So it's about you as an individual. It's not about you as one of 4 directors of a company. It's about your personal situation and what you need and what you want. And we can help you to model that. What if you got this? What would that look like? Or what if you didn't get the amount that you need? What other things can you do now in order extracting profits to plan for that?
Yeah, because it is really interesting having conversations with business owners, particularly when they're coming to that point when they sell the business. They look at the number, they go, that's a big number, 5 million, 10 million. But then actually, when you actually put it into the model that you talk about, actually knowing your level of expenditure, what your lifestyle is, like that's not actually going to cover you for a huge amount of time.
Yeah.
And suddenly people are going, oh God, I didn't realise that.
No, absolutely. And I think even if, for maybe younger clients, people just starting out on the sort of financial planning journey, if you like, people think, oh, I've got a mortgage, I must take out a protection policy. Yes, that might repay your mortgage, but there might be other forms of protection that you need to look at, because the debt is not the only thing. If you have children, there'll be childcare costs that might need to be replaced if something was to happen to either parent. So it is about making sure that you're covering all angles, I think, is the most important part.
Definitely, yeah, I totally agree. So we kind of alluded to what we were going to talk about next, and that's kind of the myths associated with financial planning. So what are the big ones that you have come across?
I think
the
big ones, and there's 2 big ones that I can think of. And the first would be that financial planning is only for people with money. I think that is a huge myth. It doesn't matter what your financial circumstances are or your wealth. You need to have a plan. You need to have something to work towards, and you need to understand your finances and what your financial future would look like. Yes, of course, a lot of financial advice is surrounded by investments and stock markets, but actually those things are equally as important for somebody less wealthy as they are for somebody who is wealthy. And often financial planning exercise is more beneficial to somebody who's actually starting out and starting to build that wealth, because their goals may be much more longer term, and it's about making sure that you're getting the right advice from the start to make sure you can get to where you want to be. I think the other one would be that financial advisors are salespeople. I mean, that's quite an old myth, but I think it is still around, and I do think people still believe that. But actually, the financial planning rather than financial advice is the most important part. The products come afterwards. So as financial advisors, financial planners, we would look at all of your circumstances and see if a financial product is required.
Yeah.
We wouldn't just sell you a pension because you've mentioned that you might need one. It's about how does that fit into your plan.
Yeah, as you said, it's people over products, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
the best way of describing
Planning
it.
before products is
Planning.
the strapline. Yeah.
Sorry, I've got it wrong. That's what I meant though. But interesting on the first myth, even if it's something as small as someone who has a small pot of savings sitting in a savings account, which they don't plan on touching, like even just having that conversation about, well, you can make that money work a little bit harder.
Absolutely.
Just simple stuff like that. It can justify having a relationship with someone like yourself.
Yes. I think it's just having somebody to fire off ideas, and we can sort of show you what the impact of these life decisions will have, and just ways in which you can start to plan and provide for your future. A lot of people just wing it and think it's going to happen. And, research and proof shows that is not the case. You have to plan for everything, especially when it comes to finances. If you think about pension planning and retirement planning, who can live off the state pension? Nobody.
Exactly.
And if you don't look to save into a pension pot, from being relatively young, it's highly unlikely that you'll be able to provide for your income need. And I don't think, especially the younger people, don't think like that. And they think they would rather not have a pension contribution coming out of their wages every month. But actually, if we start to show people and help people to understand the importance of that, I think that's half the battle.
Definitely. And I mean, I've done the exercise, well, I've certainly seen demonstrations of the kind of stuff you do with clients, and it's just amazing how clear you can make it in terms of, by using some very high level assumptions in terms of, this is what the income I'm going to have, for the next 5 years. This is the plans I'm going to have into what's going to be in my pension at the point that I retire. It can quickly kind of give you an idea of like, that's not feasible. You need to actually put some more money in quickly, or like, actually, you should be all right.
Absolutely.
So it's incredible and highly worth doing, I would say, for anyone at any age. Because particularly long term, like now, as a 31-year-old, although I look about 40 odd, I still don't fully appreciate, probably in my own mind, like what my financial future is going to look like.
I think people always think they'll put it off, and often, a client might come to us when they're nearing retirement, and actually there could have been many steps they could have taken prior to that to plan for that ultimate date. I want to go at 65. You're coming to us at 57. Actually, you've had years before that where you could have been making steps so that your financial position is a lot more secure. So it is about thinking about it early. It's about thinking about it, as soon as you start to work and you're getting an income, and what best you can do with that.
Totally, yeah. So what we wanted to kind of finish it off with then was just some potential tips for anyone who's listening of any age.
Yeah. I think the first step with financial planning is understanding your circumstances. And the first part of that is, what income do you have coming in? What expenses do you have going out? Is there a surplus? If there is a surplus, what are your goals for the future? Short term, medium term, and long term. The first step is to then make sure that you have a sufficient emergency fund, which I mentioned earlier is between 6 and 12 months of your spending needs. Then if you're looking to save for a short-term goal, such as a house deposit,
or a holiday,
or travel, or you need to repay a credit card or something like that. It's just about understanding what you have and how you can achieve that, and what time scale you have for that. Above that, it's then looking at potentially investment vehicles. So, there's a £20,000 ISA allowance that everybody has available every year. It's tax-free in growth and tax-free upon withdrawal. Is that something you could use to maybe look at a longer-term planning need? Very important one is pensions. There's something called auto-enrollment now, which means that everybody, as soon as they start work, once they become eligible, they reach a certain income threshold and age, they're automatically put into a pension. don't see that as a bad thing. See that as something really important and really positive. And then as maybe income starts to grow, and you're stepping up in the career path, then if you have a surplus income, how much more could you put into a pension arrangement, which would give you the income that you needed on the other side of that? What level of risk do I need to take? Am I comfortable with in order to get to where I want to be? And then, just protection, making sure your family are protected in the event that something awful and untimely was to happen. Because nobody would like to think that, anybody would be left in an awful position. And I think people often choose not to look at protection because they think it's a premium that they can't afford. But actually, when you look at the reality of it, it's extremely important, especially for, people setting out on, accumulating wealth and, building their career, and they have a young family and that kind of thing. It's really important to make sure that you're covering it all off.
Absolutely, and there's so much cover out there now, isn't there? Just as you said, there's the bare minimum where it's covering your mortgage, but then there's kind of income protection and all sorts of other stuff like that, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely.
That could be a whole different podcast. We can go into all of that.
It could.
I suppose one last question I had, like in terms of like ISAs and pensions, there are, as you said, kind of different caps. Do you think that people are almost put off by that in the sense of like £20,000 is a lot of money? Like, what's putting 100 quid in going to mean to me? Because it's clearly not designed for people like me, is it? Do you think that's a kind of barrier that some people have? It
probably is, because when you band around figures like that, people will instantly think, oh, well, I don't have that kind of money, so it's not important to me. But actually, it is important for us all to have a savings pot that can be used for instant access. And then it's also important to understand if investing in pensions can actually better your life, give you a much more financially secure future, and whether that's £100, whether that's £50, or whether that's somebody who's able to put the full 20,000 in, understanding how that can assist you and your family is beneficial.
Totally, yeah. So the moral of the story is put in what you can, basically. Put
in what you can and plan. Set yourself realistic goals, and take it from there. And seek financial advice is what we're here for.
Of course, absolutely. Well, on that bombshell, I hope you guys found some really interesting stuff in that. And obviously, financial planning week is all about awareness, and hopefully, at the very least, you're a bit more aware about some of the options. Yes. Obviously, Emma and your team are available to bounce ideas off at any time. And thanks very much for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Yeah, thanks.